Welcome, everybody, to the show. It is Counter Clipping stream number 91 for September 19th, 2022. And I would like to welcome everybody to the show. Tonight, we are still clipping Lava Tide and Mount St. John. That'll continue to be the case for the next several weeks in all likelihood. We are drinking, this is the wrong bottle. We are drinking Glenmorangie La Santa. The bottle on the screen is correct. The bottle sitting right next to me was not. It is a pretty typical Glenmorangie, except that it's finished in sherry casks, and you could tell it makes a big difference on the nose, less of a difference on the palate. What we mean by that is that it spends most of its life in bourbon casks of American oak for most of its life, probably at least 10 years. And then it spends anywhere from the last 6 months to 2 years. They recask it into Oloroso sherry and Pedro Jimenez sherry casks. So it changes the complexity of it. It's a little more interesting, I think, than the standard Glenmorangie, which I do like. And it is bottled at 43%. And if I'm not mistaken, it's probably got caramel color in it. It's probably chill filtered, but at least it's bottled at 43%, which enhances the flavor. So not because it's going to get me wasted faster, because I don't do that anymore, but it's pretty good. So the topic tonight is the pre-order rundown of what's available from Legion Wargames. And yes, I need a shave. Also, don't forget to like the video, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Hopefully I will have be able to read that this time. We got to turn that thing off because that wasn't supposed to be on. That's on from something else. Get rid of that. We got the logo up there already. Let me know if the slight echo seems better this week than it did last week. I think I did some audio testing, and I think it does a little bit. I put some acoustic tiles up. I need about 2 more packs of those, maybe 3 more packs, which we'll have to wait until payday. So, but I feel like it's already making a little bit of a difference. So hopefully that's the case. So before we go any farther, let us say hello to Abraxas MF, Alan Salazar, Bill Simone, Brian Foley, Charles Latorre, Christopher Press, Daniel Silverthorne, David Imperato, Doug Blayart, Ed Holtzman, Fast Hines, the legendary Fucko is in the house, Jason W., Jeff Beeler, Jeffrey Edwards, John Clark, Carl Creeder from the Wargame Boot Camp, Lind Pratt from Central Ohio, Mark McNair, Matt Davidson, Mike Anthony, Phil Hatfield, Rob Johnson, Sean Torno, welcome to the stream. Stephen Roberts, Stigler is here. The Command Tent, Thomas Bandy, Tim Zales, Todd Cox, Vince Ree, and William Bird. Hopefully I didn't miss too many people. I know I missed several. Let's also give a big shout out and say hello to our new channel moderator, Andrew Franca, joining John Longshore on the Ardwulf Lair moderation team. Thank you both very much for helping out. Not that it's like incredibly hard to do, but we're going to talk about this in a little bit. There might be a project coming up that requires a little more lift on everybody's part. I missed John C. from the gloomy Philippines. I saw him in the chat, but he wasn't on the list that YouTube provides for me. So what's going on? So we continue to play Last Blitzkrieg. We're having a lot of fun with it. I think it's a brilliant system. It is working very well. We're really starting to get the hang of it now. It's moving very quickly. We did probably 10 activations on Wednesday night. It went very well. We are playing with 3 people. There's 2 German players and 1 allied player, and the 1 German player, not me, missed last week, and we've got a couple other events up in the immediate future that will prevent us from having a full table. But we're working on that. We're also working on getting a 4th person again, and we'll see how that works out. So I was digging around in old videos not too long ago, which made me check out the blog, and it has come to pass that Ardwulf's Lair on October 22nd will be 15 years old. Now, the blog long predates the YouTube channel, only by a couple of years, actually, but I didn't start doing tabletop wargaming stuff until about 2014, as far as I could tell. But nevertheless, Ardwulf's Lair will be 15 years old in October, and there will be a massive as I can make it, hubbub about that. I'm already working on that, so I don't have a specific announcement, but stay tuned. You listening here at the Counter Clipping Show will definitely be the first folks to hear about it. Minimally, there will be some giveaways, some like more giveaways. So we'll see. I only fucked up one of the emails to people asking about giveaways. So hopefully everybody else will not be offended. It will come through with something. We'll see what happens. So we have some GMT news. So let us hop over to that before we get into the night's topic. So this is the GMT monthly update for September 2022. Now there's an update to the update that we'll talk about in a second. Now, as usual, please do check this out on GMT's website. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Let me also mention, since I forgot, even though it's in the script, which is not really a script, it's just an outline, that please, super chats are on, super stickers are on. I'm considering turning on YouTube channel memberships, but I'm thinking I don't want to really do that. I don't really want to deal with that. But nevertheless, super chats, super stickers are here. If you want us to help support the channel, it really does help a lot. And it is also a way to get your comment or question highlighted so that I don't miss it, which is a thing that otherwise, I mean, I try and get to everybody, but sometimes we have like over 100 people in the chat, and I just missed stuff. And there was that one time we had over 200 people in the chat. So there's that. So let's get to the GMT update. Products that will be shipping. This is related to the subsequent update that will be happening. Battles for the Shenandoah, expansion for Death Valley, Cuba Libre, 4th printing, Fields of Fire, the Bulge, Fire in the Lake, 3rd printing, Norway 1940 for PQ-17, and Last 3 Yards Mission Pack number 1. So I'll give you the so nobody gets too excited. I'll give you the subsequent update, which is basically that the containers that these were in have gotten held up in customs unexpectedly. So nobody really knows exactly how much longer it's going to take. The only thing in that list that I personally am on the hook for is Battles from the Shenandoah. I probably should just suck it up and order the PQ-17 expansion as well. But I, have had PQ-17 for almost 10 years and I still haven't played it. So maybe I should not. I mean, I trust myself to be able to wrangle up a copy if it comes to that after the fact, even if it goes out of print. And that particular thing is probably not likely to go out of print. I'm probably wrong about that. You never know. All right. So play deck updates, new P500s. We'll talk about those in a minute. Here is a sneak peek of the box back of Clash of Sovereigns, which is coming, which is War of the Austrian Succession. That is an interesting topic that has a decent number of games on it, but not really that many. So I think there's definitely room. And I'm pretty sure the only other thing on the War of the Austrian Succession that's available right now is a Pragmatic War from Compass, which I have and which is supposed to be good, but which I haven't played. That is also a point-to-point game, and I think it might be card-driven as well, but this looks closer to the kind of traditional card-driven model that GMT has used a lot. Not that they're the only people. Lots of folks are using that, standing on the shoulders of the giant Mark Herman. So GMT 1 update, new series rules for Fields of Fire, which I'm pretty sure was there last week. Here's some playtesting stuff. Here is some new updated Vassal modules, including Into the Woods, Great Battles of Julius Caesar Deluxe. I'm going to break in on the subject of Great Battles of Julius Caesar Deluxe, because if you watch the unboxing video from last week, you'll notice immediately that everything is blue. This turns out to have been, and then I made another video, and that one it looked fine, and then it rendered, and I looked at the video, and it's blue. So that turns out to be the piece of shit AMD driver that is running on my piece of shit AMD graphics card. So, let this be a warning. I don't trust, if you take my word for it, I don't trust AMD at all. So I saved probably $200 on the computer for the sake of having AMD hardware in it instead of NVIDIA and Intel. And I have had more problems than I would have had I had NVIDIA and Intel hardware. So also SPQR Deluxe, Commands and Colors for Napoleonic, Time for Trumpets, which has already been out for a while, I know. So check those out if you're interested. Designer interviews, which include a giant pile of stuff from the Player's Aid. I have a designer interview scheduled for hopefully this week, and this is in fact the video that I was trying to edit today, and it's from GMT too, that turned out blue. So not only did it turn out blue and I had to scrap it, but I did about half the editing, saved it, and then ran through the rest of the editing and then tried to render it and then closed the program without saving it again. So I didn't lose the entire project, but I lost about half of it. So that sucks. Don't use AMD. GMT merchandise, all that stuff, GMT online, blah, blah, blah. P500 edition. So there's a Dark Summer second printing. I already have the first printing, don't need that. So the two P500s in question are Fighting Formations. This is the Chad Jensen system from the late Chad Jensen. That's not this. Okay, this is Fighting Formations, U.S. 29th Infantry Division. Game designed by Chad Jensen. I don't know if this was something that was in the works when Chad passed or if somebody else has picked up the slack on this particular series. But this is a pretty interesting looking game system that I think a lot of folks, I'd like to see more folks playing it. Let me put it that way. I don't see as many people playing this thing as I would like. Based on how interesting it looks. I'd like to hear more about it, is what I'm saying. Brant from the Armchair Dragoons and David Imperato, if I didn't get you earlier, welcome back to the stream. Next is this thing. The next thing is Napoleon in Egypt. This is a game by Pascal Tupi and Tom Tupi Durant. This is a point-to-point card-driven game. It's supposed to be pretty light, pretty playable in a short amount of time, like 2 hours or so, about the campaign of Napoleon in Egypt, which I actually just finished. No, I listened to the Age of Napoleon podcast, which I'm still not completely caught up on, but I'm a long way into it. So it turns out that the Napoleonic campaign in Egypt was more interesting than I thought. So if you're interested in this subject, which has not been widely covered in Wargames, there are a couple examples. There's at least one S&T game, for example, on Napoleon's campaign in Egypt. And some of the big strategic games do sort of cover it at their scales. The new edition of War and Peace, for example, does, which the original actually did not, but the new one does. The new version of War and Peace from One Small Step. So this might be something to look at if you're interested in that topic. So having talked about those new P500s, new Down in Flames, latest design from Mark Herman. I don't know what that is, but chances are pretty good I'll buy it. That's for sure. John C. from the gloomy Philippines. I appreciate that. Yeah, so John mentions that Chad was working on this when he passed. Yeah, I mean, this looks like a really interesting system, actually, and I'd like to see more support for it. So it's really good that that this new volume in that series, which I think will be the third volume in that series, second or third, somebody will correct me. I'm glad to see that somebody had to finish development on it, if nothing else. So thanks, John, for the clarification on that and for the super chat. It's much appreciated. Product that will make 18xx fans happy. So that's another 18xx game or an expansion for an existing 18xx game. I have 2 18xx games, and I haven't played an 18xx game in 20 years, so not incredibly important to me. New game in the coin series depends whether I buy that or not. Depends on my interest level in the topic. I've got about six or seven coin games, and I've owned, I think, 2 more that have passed through my hands. And I like the game series. It's just that not every topic is of interest to me. And I got to save money somewhere, right? Coming events. There's an event in Spain, it sounds like, in Cadiz. Here is Fall 2022 weekend at the Warehouse. And SD HistCon, November 11th through the 13th. That looks cool, too. Retail price increase on Mr. President, which we heard about already in past months. Counter trades are back. We'll get them while they last, as usual. Let's see, what else do we have here? We've got the Pacific War tutorials from the Board Games Chronicle. Those are worth your time if you're trying to figure Pacific War out, which is challenging. I won't say that it isn't. And then once we get back to, okay, so we've already talked about the things that we're supposed to start shipping September 21st. So this week, basically. And in fact, they'll be delayed by, I'd say, at least a week. Next charges and shipments will be on October 1st. That's Charioteer and Skies Above Britain. We will mention Skies Above Britain again very shortly. And then when we look at the production outlook, at sea, late September, arrival date, Charioteer, Skies Above Britain, and the second edition rules and player aid card for Hitler's Reich. Hitler's Reich looked interesting, but then it it kind of landed with a thud due to what is considered to be a not amazing rulebook. So those who invested in Hitler's Reich probably do want a second edition rulebook, and presumably this will be available for download as well. Ready at the factory for shipping on September 16th. The Dominant Species Marine second printing. That was kind of fast. Next War Poland second edition. Next War Supplement number 3. I say this every time it advances in the queue. I think I do still need to order Next War Supplement number 3. And at the printer, things that changed. Ancient Civilizations of the Middle East, Clash of Sovereigns, Last 100 Yards, Volume 1, second printing will be they're at the printer and will eventually leave the printer. And then going to the printer in September, Atlantic Chase second printing and Paths of Glory Deluxe second printing. I'm actually thinking of picking up the new edition of Paths of Glory for a couple of reasons. One, the graphics have been updated. The rules haven't really changed, but they have also in the last couple of printings incorporated the additional cards that were present in the Paths of Glory Player's Guide. And it would be nice if I would resume my Paths of Glory tutorial series at some point. And if I'm going to do that, then I really should be doing it with the current version of the game. So Mike Anthony says, according to BGG, there are no Kevin Zucker designs covering Egypt. If there are, I don't know about them, and they are not in either of the Zucker Napoleonic series. However you calculate that. We are drinking Glenmorangie La Santa, finished in sherry cast. It's pretty good. It's also very reasonably priced. I mean, we did just get, so on Chad's comment here, we did just get, maybe it seems like a long time, but we did just get the new Army Group Center in like February. So if it takes them a year or so, I mean, they've hit the numbers eons ago. They've hit the numbers already. So I think it'll move through the queue pretty fast once Vance and team have declared it to be ready. And then in final art, there's nothing new. In the art department, there's nothing new. During art department readiness, there's nothing new. Thanks, GMT, for having all these links to these awesome content creators. Except me, I don't get a link. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Sample cards for Congress of Vienna. This looks great. Here's the map for Cuius Regio, which just made 500 on the P500. I've got that ordered. I don't have Congress of Vienna ordered, but I'm going to end up getting it. There's no question about that. And the sensible way to do that is, in fact, to pre-order it. Now, I think that's about it from the GMT update. I will mention that the new Mark Herman offering, I'm really hoping that's Thunderbolt or Hoplite 2, but we will see exactly what that is. Those are two things that Mark has talked about that are in the pipeline, one of which is a Berg Legacy thing, in that Hoplite 2 would be a GBOH game. And of course, that series is co-designed with Richard Berg. And the other one would be Thunderbolt, which is the legendary, long-awaited for decades, third volume in the Ancient World series, which is a series I like a ton. I will be delighted to get that whenever it shows up. So that would be great. I'm also excited about a lot of the other stuff, but we're supposed to be talking about Legion Wargames tonight. By the way, my back's pretty good. It's not as great as I would like. It's still stiff in places. If I spend a long time sitting in one place, it gets pretty stiff, but I'm not in actual pain anymore. So that's good. I think I really want to see something new for Great Battles of History, actually. And the only thing I was aware of that was in the pipeline was supposed to be Hoplite 2, which was supposed to cover all of the various Peloponnesian War battles that weren't covered already elsewhere in the series, which there's a lot of, actually. So let's hope Mark gets some progress on that. I hope that is still in the works, but I don't know exactly what the status is on that. So, but I do know that I have seen Mark post some things about the status of Thunderbolt, and that's moving along as far as I can tell. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through on to the Stigler playing golf. That'll learn you. Chad Canady, I haven't heard anything on Winner's Victory from NES, but if Marty Sample's in the chat, he will fill us in on that. I think that's coming pretty soon. I don't know how soon. NES tends to take their time on this stuff, and I am pretty happy with that, to be completely honest about it. So let me start us out. We're going to go in alphabetical order here, and I laboriously changed all of these to be in alphabetical order, even though they aren't on their page. So we're talking about only the stuff that is up for pre-order. Um, we can at some future time do like a best of Legion Wargames if we want. And they got a lot of pretty good looking games. Mo from Mo's Game Table, welcome back to the stream. And Alistair Logie, welcome to the counter clipping show. It's great to have you. Yeah, Frank says that golf is a good walk ruined unless you're drinking and smoking a cigar. Yeah, I basically agree with that. All right, so 1066 Year of Destiny. This is interesting looking because it is a 3-player game. The 3 players presumably are the Normans, the English, led by Harold. The Norwegians led by Harold Hardrada, and then the English led by Harold Godwinson. And of course, William from Normandy ends up on top of that. So there's not tons of information about that, but we do get some, we can look at some sample map graphics if we want. This looks like a card-driven, area-based game. It is a 3-player game. Looks kind of interesting. This is a pretty interesting topic, actually. This did not have to go down the way it went down historically. So it's an interesting topic to speculate about. And here's some counter graphics if we want to take a look at these. And these look pretty good. Tostic, of course, is Harold Godwinson's brother who betrays him to Harold Hardrada and ends up dead for his trouble. So, as does Harold Hardrada. So, the last of the great Viking kings, Harold Hardrada. 6 feet of earth or as much more as he requires. Jeff Anderson says if you get knocked out in 1066, you can invade with the Danes. That might be interesting. I mean, this looks interesting to me. I don't know. I haven't pre-ordered it. Legion Wargames has a bit of a weird pre-order thing. I mean, you can get to their pre-order page. They have kind of a separate page for their pre-order stuff with separate registration. It's a little bit weird, but it's pretty typical the way you pay for it. They don't take your money up front. They charge you when the thing's ready to ship. So this looks pretty interesting. This is by Jeff Noble. He has designed a couple of games for Legion, including Red vs. Reverse is the title I'm most familiar with, which is not very, that is. I can't afford either the time or the money to golf. So 1066 by Jeff Noble looks pretty interesting. $52 is pretty good. This is like an estimated price. I don't know how often it varies from that. Next is A Glorious Chance. This is a game about the naval war on the Great Lakes in the War of 1812, which is an interesting topic that doesn't get covered very much. There is another game that covers it, coming from Compass, actually, 1812, Great Lake War on the Great Lakes Frontier, which looks very interesting. This is from Gina Willis, who, as far as I could tell, has only designed one other game, but that game is Skies Above Britain, which is about to release from GMT. And which I expect is going to do very, very well. So good for Gina. This is coming along, and I don't have the. If we look at the, they put these on different pages. 2 maps actually, so it's pretty big, pretty decent sized game. Map graphics look interesting. Looks like a broad area movement map, and here's a battle board. And if you want to look at the counter graphics. Here's some counter graphics too. Counters look pretty nice. So if you're interested in naval stuff, War of 1812 stuff's not that often covered. So maybe check this out. And we see there's a bunch of, look, the table density on this map actually looks a little bit high. Not high as in a bad way, but, higher than we're typically going to see nowadays. All right. Next up is number 3, but it's number 1 for me because it's the one that I've played. This is A Hot Dry Season from designer Pat Mullen. This is Pat's first design. Still needs about 60 pre-orders to hit its number. If you want to check out some gameplay video of this, there is gameplay video of this in the channel history. So check that out. And I loved it. I thought it was great. And it's kind of stalled on kind of the marketing wheel that such as it is that Legion Wargames has. A lot of these things, you're going to see me make some cracks on a later entry here about how long some of these things have been sitting around in the pre-order system. So highly recommended by me. Graphics are unconventional, but I think they're effective. This is operational Vietnam. That's a thing you don't see very often. And it is very interesting. It plays really well. You'll see the family resemblance, I think, with Silver Bayonet, but it's its own thing in its own system. Mo says, yeah, well, Mo doesn't seem to like the map. I actually like the map. I think I understand. I mean, I talked to Pat about, hey, why did you pick this art style? And he wanted something that didn't look like everything else. And that was successful. It doesn't look like anything else in the wargaming hobby. However, that said, I do think that the map will scare people away. I got to be honest. So just because it's so unconventional. So, the Strelnikov's Vietnam unit is in the hot dry season. So, yeah, fascinating piece of military history too, by the way. And Pat did tons of research to make this thing work, and it's a game that couldn't have been published in the 80s. All right, so on from a hot dry season. Next is Aces of Valor. This is a solitaire World War I aerial combat game. You command a fighter squadron, so rather than an individual fighter, and that I think makes this sound kind of interesting. So we do have Western Front Ace, which is coming from Compass, and designer Gregory M. Smith, which is going to do solitaire World War I air combat. This is going to do like squadrons, which actually sounds like it might be interesting for that reason. If we look at the counter graphics, because that's going to be what's important here, the map might just all be blue. Counters are pretty nice. The map is looks like it's a display rather than a map as such. So that's intriguing. Yeah, there's a campaign map down in the lower right that is a square map, which is probably fine for this particular topic. The air certain periods, it's not necessarily World War I air combat. World War I aerial games are not necessarily, that's not an exciting topic for the first little while that planes got used in World War I, but it becomes an interesting topic when you start getting into dogfight games. This is intriguing because it's not a dogfight game, and I'd be curious to see if they can make this work. So moving on from Aces of Valor. Now, this is one that's been sitting on the P500, whatever. It's not a P500. It's like a P250 at Legion forever. It's made its number. It looks very interesting. This is a game by John Heim. I'm like, oh, this looks neat. I'd be very curious to see a Pearl Harbor game. And this has just been sitting around in the, haven't made its number for quite some time. So I'm not sure what's up with that. But the map looks good to me. That's Pearl Harbor. The counters look pretty good. It's an interesting topic. Not sure what the actual problem is for this. And this says, this attracts me. Air Raid Pearl Harbor is a detailed simulation and study of an iconic event in U.S. and indeed world history. It's extensively researched, inspired by the nearly lifelong interest of the designer in the subject matter. That sounds fantastic. So I don't know why this goes off at 8:30. I really need to just disable that. And I'll pick this up whenever it shows up. John Madison, welcome back to the stream. Good to have you back. As Doug mentions, World War I air combat is a good subject, but like the air campaigns, yeah, I'd like to see that, but I don't know. Perfidious Albion says the raid on Taranto proved that it could be done. Maybe, but it doesn't have the weight that Pearl Harbor does as a topic. Only the buffs have heard about Taranto, to be honest about it. All right, next is All Our Brothers, Solferino 1859, game designed by Brian Armour, which is he is not a designer I am familiar with, but it is a perfect name for a war game designer. This is on the topic of Battle of Solferino. So looking at this is an adaptation of the Blind Sword system. So it's a Herman Lettman inspired design. This I take to be says playtest version. So very interested to see this. This is going to be, yeah, very interesting topically. Again, these are playtest counters, so don't take the counters or map art too seriously. But any adaptation of the Herman's blind sword system, I think, is worth a look. Um, my guess is it'll probably play pretty well, assuming adequate development. This is next, Ars Bellum, Ancients, Volume 1. This is, it's very ambitious to say Volume 1 when, things struggle on the Legion Wargames pre-order list for so long in a lot of cases. This is Tactical Battles in the Age of Antiquity. Looks like there's a whole bunch of battles in here. There's 12 different battles, some Roman battles, not any of the really incredibly well-known ones. The Greek battles, I mean, I'm not an expert on Greek stuff particularly, or on any of this stuff, but Chironea, Thessaly, um, Crocus Field, I think I've heard of. I think most of these are represented in GBOH in either Great Battles of Alexander or wherever it may have shown up in C3I. So French designer, it'd be curious to see this for that reason. I'm probably not in the market for it because I have my need for tactical ancients amply covered by GBOH. Nevertheless, it might be interesting, and I certainly wish the designer and Legion some success on it. If we look at the counters, we are going to see, I think, that this is not going to be as in-depth a study of ancient tactical stuff as, for example, GBOH. Not seeing that it. Alan Salazar asks if Blind Swords solos well. So there's no like discrete solo system in the Blind Swords games, but it's a chip pull system, so it solos better than games that aren't. It doesn't have a dedicated solo mode, but it is in the class of games that solo as well as games without a dedicated solo mode solo, if that makes any sense at all. So moving on from Ars Bellum, B26 of the Marauder Strikes. This is a game by Magnus Kimura, and this is bombing runs over Europe from July 43 to May 1945. So this is, there's going to be an add-on, apparently. I'm a little confused. Looks like this uses similar mechanics to B-17 Queen of the Skies or Legion's own B-29 Super Fortress. As opposed to Target for Today and Target for Tonight, which I feel have gotten more attention. So, and yeah, I think this has hit its number as well, and it's just, in whatever development spin cycle they're in. Battles of the Northwest Rebellion by Mark Woloshen, whose name I may or may not be pronouncing correctly. So this is very interesting because this is, what's the Northwest Rebellion? This is apparently something that happened in Western Canada in 1885 that I've never heard of. So those Canadian folks who might be watching might find this pretty interesting. I've been consistently happy. I don't have a lot of Legion war games, but I've been pretty happy with the component quality of the games that I do have, and the overall quality, actually. So there's 5 battles in here. We'll look at the maps. Do we have? So we don't have a picture of the map on this one. Grand tactical. Each unit represents companies. Don't forget, we're not talking Gettysburg here. Okay. So 5 battles that I've never seen another game cover. So for that reason, this might be pretty interesting. Don't know if this is intended to be part of a series or not. Doesn't say that, but not a topic that we hear a lot about. Black Eagles over Belgium. So at first I thought this was, the Prussians invading Belgium, or the Germans invading Belgium, but it is not. It is 1815. So this is going to be the Prussian battles of between the Prussian army under Blucher and the French army under Napoleon. This is regimental battalion scale, so it gives you Ligny, Wavre, and Plancenoit. This looks kind of interesting, actually. Designed by Paul Fish, who's another person that I'm not particularly familiar with. I'm looking at the map graphics. Don't know if this is final. Oh, look, it's a Rick Barber map. Holy cow. Okay. So, be great if the more Rick Barber maps I see, the happier I am. Mike Anthony, thank you very much. Yes, the Noble Knight sale does end tonight. I, however, am working on getting a code for you folks. Won't have it next week, but it is in the pipeline. So we're working on that for October. But yeah, the sale ends tonight, and it's a pretty good sale too. So these are playtest counters. Map art by Rick Barber. Can't complain about that. Interesting looking game. Now that I see it's a Rick Barber map, hopefully, it won't be. Hopefully, Rick finished the map to a sufficient state of finishing that we can get a Rick Barber map and not a map that Rick Barber drew but got redrawn by somebody else. We've seen that in a couple of places. I mean, we saw examples of that when Rick Barber was still alive. But I mean, it would be just nice to have another Rick Barber map. Let me put it that way. Strelnikov mentions Dien Bien Phu, pretty well regarded Kim Kanger game from Legion, on a topic that hasn't been covered a ton. There's a few games on it though. Brent McCabe, yeah. So a lot of my bandwidth is consumed with talking about stuff from GMT and Compass and MMP, right? Because I like a lot of games published by those companies. Nevertheless, Legion Wargames, there's a couple others too. So we'll be doing this kind of thing again. Legion Wargames is a company that does core war games, right? These aren't crossover. This isn't Root or something like that, right? Where it's kind of war gamey, but not really. This is like serious war game, old fuddy-duddy stuff. And they deserve a little more spotlight than they're getting. So that's why we started with Revolution. So Black Eagles over Belgium by Paul Fish sounds pretty interesting, actually. But it is battles rather than like a campaign game too. Okay, so here we have the 7 Hex series. There's a couple of games in this 7 Hex series on this list. This one is 2 battles from 1812, Borodino, which is huge, and Polotsk, which is not as huge, but not sure how exactly big Polotsk was. Relatively little known battle that looks like it's about 50,000 men there, where that's not anywhere near as big as Borodino. Borodino was the decisive battle of the campaign, insofar as there was a decisive battle. It in fact was not particularly decisive, kind of a Pyrrhic victory for Napoleon. The French won, but it was very costly, and they just marched to Moscow, which then the Russians burned and retreated some more, and then they waited a couple of months, and then they had to leave. So John Stanley mentions Captain's C from Legion. So what interests me about that is that, and we'll talk about Mike Nagel here in a minute, because he's got a couple games in this pipeline. It's a Mike Nagel design. Mike Nagel is the designer of Flying Colors, which is terrific. So very interested in seeing that. It is a much simpler game than Flying Colors, and it is in turn much simpler than something like Close Action. Which somebody asked last week, and I missed the question. What is my Age of Sail game of choice? It is in fact Close Action. Very pretty looking map. Don't know really much about this 7 Hex system, but the map looks good, and the counters look pretty good too. So pretty nice looking game. Chivalry at Bay. So speaking of Mike Nagel, Tactical Battles of the 100 Years' War. So Mike, this is a topic Mike Nagel is not well known for, as far as I'm aware. This is a whole pile of medieval battles. This should give you a little bit of a sense of just how much medieval stuff, just in the 100 Years' War, we don't have games about, or have very few games about. There's games on a couple of these. There's certainly games on Agincourt. There's an old SPI classic on Agincourt. There's certainly a game about Krejci. There's games on a couple of the other ones, but not very many. So, there's a lot of of exploration that we could be doing here. Looking at the maps, we see it looks like more of a display style map, or is this a card game? No, I think it just it just runs off displays is what it looks like to me. Counters look fine. Little less interested in it if it's not on a hex map. That sounds incredibly snobby, but I never claimed not to be snobby. Tony, this is in fact Legion's entire pre-order list. Yes. There's about 20 more to go. Next is Corregidor. This is, I believe, been sitting around on the pre-order list for quite a while as well. This is about the Battle of Corregidor, but it's got two games. So you've got the initial fall of Corregidor and the recapture of Corregidor by the Americans in 1945. So looking at the map, this says work in progress. So I take this to mean that it's not a final map yet. And this, this is classic Wargames stuff right here. This is of interest to me. Artwork by Knut Grunitz. So who has done some pretty nice work for Compass, potentially among others. I know his name because he's done stuff for Compass. If there's a Death Valley of the pre-Renaissance period, it is. As somebody mentioned, the Men of Iron tri-pack from GMT. But if you want something simpler, that's pretty simple game, but not, maybe not this simple. It's always Richard Berg's Medieval too, for that matter. So interesting looking game, interesting designer, Corregidor. Next is Drive on Voronezh. This is a game by John Tyson. Now, John Tyson, I've never played a John Tyson game, but he's done a bunch of stuff, mostly Civil War, from that's been published through Hollenspiel. So very interesting. I'd be curious to see what this looks like. I'd be curious to learn more about it. You see, it is a hex-based game, very different stylistically than the stuff that they've done through Hollenspiel. Once again, the counters are very classic war game counters. Nothing crazy. Nothing crazy on here. And sounds like there are event cards as well, which look like maybe they're not final art. I would assume. Mander says that Legion seems to specialize in games covering unusual and little covered topics, which may also be kind of a problem. Obscure topics probably lower interest. Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, not everything here is obscure, right? I mean, they got a thing about Pearl Harbor. Not exactly, something that we forgot about. But we also what we don't see is like, here's another World War I strategic game, or here's another, a copy of Russian campaign. That kind of stuff is not what we're seeing out of Legion. So it does seem like they're pretty choosy about what they choose to pursue, which, I can appreciate that. The downside, of course, is that, we've been waiting for some of these things for years too. So there's that. Okay, moving on from the Voronezh game. Here is Failure on the Tugela, The Relief of Ladysmith, 1900. And this is 1899. I take this, I don't know anything about this topic. I assume it's a Boer War game. British Empire stuff. Okay. So looking at the map, looks like it's an area map. Same map graphics as same graphical style is how I read that comment. As Redver's Reverse. And here is, in fact, the Redver's Reverse map. So this is a Boer War game. For those interested in the Boer War, it's not something I'm particularly interested in. But for those interested in the Boer War, we don't have tons of games about it. So here's another one. And it looks like the next game in the series will be going to the Crimean War. So for those interested in that. Next, Stigler mentions, the Queen, thanks for coming here instead of watching the Queen's funeral again, which is they're probably still walking. Invasion Malta plus bonus invasion game Liros 1943. So as I recall, this is a game that was dropped by GMT from their P500 system because it just wasn't moving fast enough. It is Advanced von Borries design. I have pretty high opinion of a lot of what Vance has done. And my favorite Vance von Bory's designs are not the East Front series, although I think those have tons of potential that have yet to be realized by me. My favorite Vance von Bory's games are Invasion Sicily and the Rhodes series, the Roads to Moscow and Roads to Leningrad, which I think are fantastic games, that I think are just completely, sadly, totally overlooked nowadays. So this is, and you know, Invasion Malta, plus you get Leros in here too. So so this let's look at the map. Boy, this map artwork by Edmund Hudson. I love the map. This map looks great. And here's Leros, which is a weirdly shaped island. Uh, Weirder than Malta, anyway. Yeah, this looks. I mean, hell, I'll buy this. No problem. Okay, the Island War series. This is this out of order? Yeah. So this is apparently a series. Volume 1 has been out for a while. Saipan and Tinian. Volume 2 is Guam here. Operation Stevedore, 1944. And then Volume 3, which is also on the pre-order list here, is Atu and Kiska. So here's the other ones. Saipan and Tinian. I've seen this get played. So doesn't look it's not terribly obscure. You know, people who are interested in these, this is obviously a playtest map. You know what? Instead of looking at that, I'm going to show you the map, the finished map for Saipan and Tinian. Here's Saipan. Here's Tinian. So for those interested in these island campaigns, but they don't necessarily want to suck it up and go for the pretty large and fairly detailed Starkweather Island series from Compass, which I have and which I think are pretty good. Maybe check these out, and eventually you'll get your hands on Guam and Atu and Kiska as well. Same deal with Volume 3 here, Atu and Kiska. These are Michael Taylor designs. Let's see if there isn't a sample map on here, but at least you got at least a little bit of a look at what it's supposed to look like based on the Saipan map. So 2 maps too, so you know, decent sized for pretty small islands. All right, after the Island Wars, we have another 7 hex game from Steve Pohl, Klisau and Fraustadt. 2 battles from the Great Northern War. Now, this is another one where it's like, so, I mean, there's a lot of Borodino battle games, right? So the Napoleonic one, you know, there's one game that's been covered a lot and one battle that hasn't really been covered that much, but I'm not terribly aware that there's much on either of these 2 battles. Great Northern War is, of course, between Sweden and Russia, and I think some other people got involved in it as well. But it is a fairly interesting topic. There's a couple games on it from like the operational / strategic level. I believe we are done clip encounters for the night. So yeah, well, Hearts of Darkness, we're not going to talk about Heart of Darkness because it's already out. So it did get a pretty warm reception. I didn't order it. I've got Source of the Nile. So I kind of have, that's not really like a thing I'm particularly intrigued by beyond owning Source of the Nile. So yeah, Adam is very involved in that development of that system still. He's got some other people doing games for it as well, but he's still pretty heavily involved. So anyway, back to Legion here. So this is Klisau and Fraustadt, Swedes and Saxons, Poles and Russians. Looking at the games that are out, I think Blenheim is the only one that's out. Borodino and Polotsk we just talked about. We look at the counter graphics. Once again, they look pretty good. Look like the same ones as the other ones. And the map, this is the same. This is the Blenheim map, actually. And this is the same map that was there on the Borodino game as well. Stigler, there weren't. So this is, so there's just a statement here that says that the map graphics will be the same high quality as Blenheim. And I do think this map looks really nice. So I think the counters are the same deal. These are probably the Blenheim, yeah, with Marlborough there. These are going to be the Blenheim um, counters, but if they look like this, everybody will be pretty happy. So moving along from that, La Primogenita, the 1941 East Africa campaign, a Kim Kanger design. So this is a topic that there have been several games on that I can think of. This, looking at it, is a hex-based game over what I take to be fairly dire terrain, and presumably we're going to get. Presumably, these are going to be the Italians. Looks like we're looking at battalions and regiments. And then these red guys, I look like British, actually. So this is 1941. So this is not them fighting the Ethiopians. And there's some kind of order mechanism in here, too. So this actually looks pretty interesting. There's not a ton on the East African campaign in 1941. I've got 2 games on it. I don't need another one. But like I said, there becomes a point where it's like I am interested in this topic, but I'm not interested enough to buy a 3rd game on this topic. But for those who are more interested in this topic than me, yeah, this is something you might want to check out. Next up is Navarro Troy. Now, this jumped out at me as well because this is a naval game by Mike Nagel, and it's ancient naval. So that's super duper interesting. There are very few games in the you wouldn't necessarily think this is true, but there's like 4 games ever that are ancient naval games. Okay, there's Trireme, there's War Galley for GBOH. There's a very small and or print and play game that somebody did, and then there's another one I think. And then let me get this out of the way. But yeah, this looks super interesting. And we look at the map graphics, we're probably going to see it's blue. And we look at the counter graphics, and these look okay. This is playtest art though, so don't take this very seriously. But a naval game from, I guess, a pre-modern naval game from Mike Nagel is, I think, worth at least a glance if you are interested at all in naval stuff. So this looks a little bit closer to Captain's Sea, which I'll show you the map graphics for that. Oops. Yeah, the link to this is busted. It's leading us back to Navarre. But Captain Sea, there's been some video on Captain Sea, so check that out. Stigler, I don't know if so. It looks other than like the mechanism by which you have to have a separate website registration to do the pre-order. You are not charged up front, and you don't have as far as I could tell, you don't have the option to get charged up front. They charge you when it's ready to go. So it's not, and it's completely different than Kickstarter. Kickstarter is you pay up front and then you go home and pray. Legion Wargames has yet to bone anybody. So, by the way, speaking of boning people, there is I don't feel comfortable giving you the entire story, but believe it or not, there is news from the Total War camp. And that news is somebody called them and they answered the phone. That's the news. So, considering the profile of that group of people for the last 10 plus years, and considering how many people are angry at them for being boned out of the price of Total War that they pre-ordered, the fact that they're still working on stuff, and they are apparently still working on stuff, apparently just not Total War, is a little bit remarkable. So for those who feel that the whole group just took the money and ran, they probably wasted the money and sat. And I wouldn't count on getting Total War out anytime soon. So Let me put it that way. So there's no news as far as, Total War's coming. It's coming. The secret investors have come out. So yeah, this is pretty much the same thing as the GMT system. You're telling them you'll commit to it, and when they are ready to produce it, they'll pay you, or you'll pay them. And if you decide, if you change your mind, you can back out. I've backed out of 1 million GMT pre-orders already. Next up is Miracle at Dunkirk. This is a Herman Luttman game. It is a solitaire game with a 2-player option, and looks like Marco, who's extremely special, has provided us with a so it's an upgrade of a previously published game called A Spoiled Victory. So looking at that map graphics, these are definitely upgraded map graphics. Area movement, looking at the counters. No counter images yet. All right, so solitaire game about Dunkirk. I think Dunkirk is a pretty good. You could do something interesting with a solitaire design on Dunkirk. Let me put it that way. So yeah, so Marco's got the original here, not the upgraded version. So Marco's not that much more special than I am. But I like Herman as a designer, so I think this is worth a look from that standpoint. So this is again, kind of a pitch for a new series. South American Wars of Independence. Cool, undertreated topic. Like to see more on it. Libertadores del Sur, so Liberators of the South, is a 2-player military simulation. Let's take a look at it. It sounds operational, and it definitely looks like it is. Looks like point-to-point card-driven game. If I interpret this correctly, this is probably this actually says final map artwork. I'm not totally bananas over it, but it doesn't look terrible either. Counter graphics. Final card. This is Scott shocking. Yeah, Herman's a good guy too, so that's nice to know that, and he's not a dick. Interesting. David Imperato says that once the game is ready, Legion continues to offer it at the P250 price for a couple of weeks. GMT kind of does too. Once they start shipping it, it's too late. Once they announce that they're billing, I think you might be able to still get the price for a couple of days at least. These are pretty nice looking, if you ask me. Very nice looking counters. The map is okay. And it's an interesting topic. And if this is going to be a whole series, I'd be super interested in that, actually. This is a South American conflicts don't get much traction in this hobby at all. There is a volume of flying colors coming called Under the Southern Cross or Beneath the Southern Cross. Both titles are games that are in development. I forget which one is which. One of them is the new Flying Colors game. The other one is the flat top on steroids game. One's from GMT and the other one's from Compass. So this looks super interesting to me. Operation Nordwind 1945. So this is a game by Steve Dixon. It pitches itself as an introductory level card assisted game. Last offensive in the West from December of 1944 to January of 1945. And looking at the map, woof, that's point to point. Wow, that's a lot of points. Okay. These are probably not final graphics, I would think. Yeah, they're playtest graphics. And here's some counters. This is probably not going to be something I personally need, but if you're super interested in that whole sort of Westwall topic, which is itself interesting, I just have several games on it already. I've got a whole entire game series on it, actually. Yeah, this isn't the final map, so Operation Nordwind might be of interest to you. Moving right along, Prelude to War. This looks interesting. So this is a game about the what I call for my organizational tables a Uh, it is not the final map. The Prelude to War. This is the interwar period between World War One and World War Two. This is sort of the last gasp of that, 1936 to 1939. I've got a couple games on this topic, none of which are entirely satisfying, if you ask me. Um, so I am pretty interested in this, actually. If we look at the map graphics, I think these are probably playtest graphics. These are playtest graphics. The map's supposed to get mounted. This is, I think people will find this to be reminiscent of Origins of the Second World War. I doubt the game plays much like that, but you would be absolutely forgiven for assuming that based on what we see here. Again, this is, there's a few games that cover this, not a lot, and I think all the games that do that I've seen have various problems. Days of Decision has problems. Cataclysm has problems. The one that works the best is Triumph and Tragedy, and it doesn't have problems, but it is not the thing that you're going to play if you want a satisfying historical game. It is instead a complete free for all that's just tons of fun to play. So I'm pretty interested in this. Again, this is a Serge Betancourt design. If I didn't say that, so there's quite a bit of material on here. And is there anything? Yeah, not really any rules. But there's a CSW discussion folder which we don't need to look at. Go check that out if you're interested. All right. Another thing that that obviously John is totally correct. What we really need is another strategic level point-to-point World War One game. And I own several, and I like several, but it is a crowded space. Let's face it. Russo-Japanese War by Michael Taylor. So this is a very interesting subject that there's really not that many games about. There's a couple about Tsushima, but and this is the Russo-Japanese War. It's well, it doesn't say that, but I take this to be a playtest map. This is another one that I think is very interesting looking and is classic war game design here, reminiscent to me of Russian campaign, but that's more or less the typeface. Interesting looking game. I think this may have hit its number as well, and it says 6 out of 10 for solitaire play too. One map, 1,100 counters though. That's kind of a lot. So 6/10 counters, really? That's a bit of an oddball. You don't see decimal inch counters very often. Okay, here's another game series that as far as I can tell, is just a new series pitch. This is from Greg Blanchett, who's done some interesting things over at Compass. Silent Dead, Operation Mars 1942. This is East Front, obviously. This is Operation Mars, which was, not a huge success. Primarily based on Zhukov's Greatest Defeat by David Glantz. So that's interesting, with OOB fleshing out by Nafziger, who's the guy. George Nafziger is the Order of Battle guy. And maps based on post-war U.S. Geographical surveys. Okay, so this looks intriguing. A couple different scenarios, at least 3 different scenarios. Do we have a working map? This looks at a glance like it might be the final map. And it looks okay. It's a hex map, so I like that. And here's some counters that I wonder if this is the so there's at least 5 scenarios, by the way. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, so this is volume 1 Belly. I don't know how to pronounce that. So this is the first volume, and then volume 2 will be Olenino, and Konev will be volume 3, and then you'll be able to put volumes 1, 2, and 3 together. So these aren't all scenarios. These are all going to be the individual games in the series. You can CPO all 3 volumes, however. So you're actually not pre-ordering. Let's look at this. We're not doing that. I'm curious to know what the price would be, but you can pre-order all 3 volumes if you want. That's a thing I haven't seen done very often. Fast Hines, thanks so much for stopping by. Skyhawk, Rolling Thunder, 1966, Vietnam, American bombing of North Vietnam. So this is a game by Steve Jixon and Bob Best. I may have actually said that correctly. Final artwork by Knut Grunitz. Here's map graphics. We're probably going to have a sort of stage style map. That's kind of what I figured. You're running air missions against North Vietnam. I think that the person seeking the detailed simulation of this is going to probably more interested in running down a copy of Downtown rather than this. That's just my hunch. But if you want a probably simpler game, and is this solitaire? This sounds like it doesn't say that. I don't see where it says that, but this looks like a solitaire game to me. And if that's the case, then hey, we haven't seen that. We haven't seen that in this space. Downtown, from having played Red Storm, Downtown is not going to solitaire well. So this does actually look kind of interesting. Not crazy about the cover, but whatever. Tachanka, Russian Civil War campaigns in the Ukraine, 1919 to 1920. I'm a sucker for Russian Civil War stuff, and this is sounds like operational Russian Civil War in the Ukraine. Here we see the the Ukraine. At least I got water tonight. We were that we planned that far ahead. Two separate 22 by 34 inch maps, which are used independently to play different scenarios, but they appear to cover this more or less the same space. That's an interesting choice. So there's a pretty good chance that you could sucker me into buying this. Actually, operational Russian Civil War sounds pretty interesting to me. And we've got the Makhno and the Black Army here too, which sounds great. So yeah, I'm probably all in on this guy. I like that topic. The Berlin Airlift. I believe this is a solitaire game as well. It sounds like it's not because players are being used in the plural. So it sounds like it's a game on the Berlin Airlift. I think you could get a good game out of that. I don't really get a strong feeling for how this thing works from looking at the stuff on the page. Yeah, no, Scott. So we're clear. If you're interested in a detailed simulation of American air raids into North Vietnam, Downtown is your game. If you're interested in a much simpler looking game than on that topic, then maybe Skyhawk. So, although I don't know that I've never owned Downtown. I don't know that that's actually part of Rolling Thunder, Operation Rolling Thunder. Counters look nice. I'll tell you that on this. And this is, if you say Kim Kanger design, no, John Paniski design, definitely not Kim Kanger. So yeah, I think based on the strength of the designer's reputation, this is probably worth a glance. And it is an interesting topic as well. But it isn't necessarily something I'm like gonna jump on personally. Robert Moffat, welcome back to the stream. All right, the end is in sight. The Last Invasion, the Fenian Raids on Canada by Mark Woloshin. This is a pair of games covering the battles of Ridgeway and Eccles Hill. Is this? Yeah, so this is another one of these Canadian military events that I had never heard of before reading this description today. So this is if you want obscure topics or you are Canadian and this happened like next door to your house, maybe take a look at this. I don't really know much about it. It looks like we have definitely playtest graphics, and it looks like I would certainly take this to be a playtest map as well. But yeah, obscure topics are always good. We are seeing, so just to say this again, to be clear, a lot of the things we're seeing, these are games on pre-order. They're not final graphics. A couple of them are, but mostly they're not. Waning Crescent Shattered Cross, Siege of Malta 1565. So this is presumably Malta versus the Turks. Knights Hospitaller, what turned out, what became the Knights of St. John, used to be the Knights Hospitaller. And here's the Siege of Malta. So we've got 2 Malta games on this list for whatever reason. And this is a game by Andy Lokes. Counter graphics. These are obviously playtest graphics as well. It says that. And map graphics probably too. Although this map doesn't look too bad. I take this to be a playtest map as well. Smelling areas or point to points. I see points that are pretty hard to see, but I take it to be a point to point game. Another topic that really hasn't really. So Brant, I don't know. I think that's a logical question to ask because there can't possibly be that many games on that topic. So without an actual title, it's kind of hard to tell. Vindaloo. I don't know why this is named Vindaloo, but it's 4 battles of the Second Anglo-Maratha War in India, involving Wellington. This is the Battle of Delhi, Asaya, Laswari, and Argaum. Probably none of those are being pronounced correctly. So check the designer out here. Richard Berg passed away several years ago. So this has been sitting around on this pre-order system literally for years. The designer has now passed away. If this hits its number, will this be published? Probably. But I'm not terribly clear on that. Like, has there been a statement or any of that? There are games about the various rebellions in Canada. I can tell you that. There's the one from Compass, the Rebellion. I forget what the exact title is, but it's the Rebellion in Lower Canada. And that's actually a pretty interesting game design too. But if you're into, 4 battles from the Anglo-Maratha, it says Maratha here and Maratha here. Don't know which is closer to what is presumably Hindi in the original. So if you're interested in these, do we have counter graphics? These are playtest graphics. And this is probably playtest graphics. It totally is. So do we have a sense of how detailed this is? Probably not super duper detailed. It's probably, naming it Vindaloo is probably Richard Berg humor. For those who don't know, Vindaloo is a spicy Indian dish originating in Goa. It is made with tons, if it's made correctly, it's made basically, there's no tomatoes in it. It's all chili peppers. It is, oh my God, my face and all the other parts of my body are on fire now. Spicy. And I do spicy, but a properly made Vindaloo is a lot. It's a lot to handle. Werewolf, Insurgency in Occupied Germany. So it so happens that I have a designer interview with Clint coming up. My editing pipeline got cornholed this week because everything was blue. So I'm backed up on interviews and on unboxings, unfortunately. So although, this goes in here. Although I have the interview filmed, it's a great interview, and I hope everybody will enjoy it. It is planned for next week, but that is dependent on me being able to effectively edit and render without having the assistance of the video card. So I'm not quite clear on what kind of impact that's going to have. So there is an interview coming. It will show up at some point. I'll roll back the damn video driver if I have to. Because I do have the latest driver. I checked that. So it's the latest driver that's topped up. So I will be able to fix it. It'll just take me a little bit of time. But we're first going to try just by turning off hardware acceleration on the rendering. So this is an alternate history scenario. There was, in fact, an Operation Werewolf. I don't know if it's called Operation Werewolf, but it was Werewolf something that was planned as the insurgency led by the SS in occupied Germany after the collapse of the German army. this was an actual thing that did actual stuff, um, but was not operationally successful. So the game supposes that a couple of other things went bad for the Allies, and the werewolf operation becomes much more significant than it was historically. And this is a coin inspired system. You will, I think, in the interview, you will definitely see the very close kinship between this and the coin games. But from talking to Clint, it's actually a pretty interestingly developed alternate history. So for those interested in this kind of thing, it is solitairable. You can bot any of the four factions. Here, playtest graphics. Um, there's also a fair amount of extra. I don't necessarily want to use the word chrome, but there's like a lot of Jeff Beeler. I didn't read it that way. Um, but there is, you don't have you are able to bot the Nazi guys. Let me put it that way. Um, it's insurgency in occupied Germany. So for those who find that distasteful, watch the interview. And you'll learn a lot more about the game than I have just said. Clint goes through it in great detail, and you can make your own decisions. So we're all grown-ups here. So the map looked good, I'll tell you that. And it's based on the actual Potsdam Agreement map of the divisions of Germany. So and last, Zeppelins, designed by Alan Sherwood. This is both 2 players and solitaire, and it is a game about Zeppelins in World War One. So who doesn't love Zeppelins? Looking at the maps, we have all of friggin' England that you're able to conduct Zeppelin operations in. So this looks like a pretty detailed simulation, and it's also playable solitaire. I have to say that this looks fairly interesting to me too. Monsters of the Purple Twilight. I'm not sure that's an effective subtitle, um, but this looks pretty interesting to me. So I changed my mind about being done with the counter clipping because it's only 9:18 and I've not clipped an entire sheet of counters yet. So I'm trying to stick closer to the topic. So that is the last of the games from Legion Wargames website. So basically, if you go to Legion Wargames, I'll show you rather than providing a link. Um, you go to the customer pre-order CPO page, and that is where you will. Like I said, it's a separate. It's weird because it's a separate registration from their regular website. So if you want to buy something that's available right now, you can go through the regular website. If you want to pre-order something, it's a separate thing. So somebody's also working on a game about the Polish resistance to Soviet occupation. By the way, that also sounds fairly interesting. So let me, I guess, close the discussion on Legion Wargame stuff just by mentioning, hey, here's the website. They got some pretty good stuff. Definitely take a look at Legion Wargames. Not everything that's good is, especially if you're a Hex Encounter person. Not everything that's good is produced by GMT, MMP, or Compass, right? So check out these guys. Check out Revolution Games. Are the kind of the 2 that I think of. There's others too. VUCA Simulations, for example. They're pretty new though, so if folks don't know about VUCA yet, I think that it's understandable. But they're working on that too. So Perfidious Albion says that there was a resupply mission to East Africa with a Zeppelin. I believe I recall hearing about that. So, and their components from the games I have, which I don't have, like I said, I don't have a ton of them, but Jeff Beeler asks if there's been a game on the Confederate insurgency after Appomattox. Yeah, this is the, let me pull that down actually. So this is why I find something like The Outlaw Josie Wales a bit distasteful. For example, as good a movie as it is a good movie, um, but it gives us that classic romanticized picture of people that fought for the South. And to his credit, Robert E. Lee came in and pretty much said, "Don't do that." So uh, that did happen, but the shape that took looks a lot more like the collapse of Reconstruction than I think the say insurgencies that we've just been talking about of an occupied country. So how many games are in their list? I can tell you it is 35. They have 35 games available for pre-order at the moment. And I think their latest release, I think, is Fire on the Mountain. Now, there's been some video coverage of this already. Looks like Zilla. There's a video from Zilla Blitz here. It's a pretty interesting looking game. A South Mountain, right? Yeah, yeah, South Mountain. It's easy to get South Mountain and Cedar Mountain mixed up. It's because they've been bundled together in a game. So, um, the game looks pretty interesting. So if anybody's interested in that, and I'm curious to know if that's going to be part of a series as well. This one is an Amber Alert. Okay, so trying to catch up with the chat here because it looks like Mike Anthony. Yes, that's absolutely right. Mo asks if Werewolf is more combat oriented than Coin. I don't have that sense. I have the sense that it is almost exactly as combat oriented as Coin. I will mention that the four factions are the Western Allies, the Soviets, the Werewolf group, and a mostly hypothetical sort of second line insurgency cult that they call the Edelweiss faction, which is basically inspired by von Stauffenberg and sort of the Prussian aristocratic disdain for Nazism that did occur in some quarters. These are not exactly liberal bastions, these folks, but they're also an insurgent faction, and mechanically it sounds reasonably interesting. So a lot of that Wild West stuff does. I mean, remember that the greatest Western of all time, which is of course the good, the bad, and the ugly, is set during the Civil War. So a lot of American Western sort of the Wild West is kind of like the matter of the United States, right? In the same sense that the King Arthur stuff is the matter of Britain, right? It's part of our national mythology, as is the Civil War, right? And all my position on this is I am happy for people to learn the actual history and not the romanticized stuff. And all we need to do is acknowledge that a lot of the media that we consume, books, games, movies, whatever, is in fact not the real history, but the romanticized stuff. So this is true. This is worth your time if you are so inclined to learn more about the failure of Reconstruction as a project. I don't. What I think of is that when the topic comes up, are two things. One, that the ecstasy of gold, the Ennio Morricone brilliant theme music to the thing, and the best best like showdown slash gunfight ever at the end of the movie or close to the end of the movie. Abraxas MF has picked up GCACW Hood Strikes North. Great game, great series. Very happy with it. If you are um If you are interested at all in the Civil War, particularly operational Civil War, highly recommended. And that's a pretty good entry point to the series too. So it is totally the longest. I think so anyway. The longest staring screen ever. So Mo says that all history gets romanticized. So not all history gets romanticized by everybody, though, right? I mean, we romanticize our history, and the English romanticize their history, and the Japanese romanticize their history. Um, so if we can get past that and start learning about like the actual stuff, then we've got a lot of interesting history and a lot of lessons that we can apply. Although that is a thing that probably happens too fatuously, let me put it that way, too superficially, when we try to apply less historical less all this is just like ancient Rome had it. Not really. I mean, it's a lot more complicated than that. That comparison is that facile comparison is less useful than some people would like you to think. So this is a pretty good quote for this, by the way, Stigler, I gotta say. This is pretty fantastic too. This is also pretty fantastic. uh, Big time sort of vanilla, stone fruit, and chocolate on the nose of this. That's what I get out of it. A little less so on the palate. Um, Roads to Gettysburg 2 is a wonderful package. So all of the big compilation. I'm a big fan of the compilation packages, right? All of the big compilation packages from MMP in the GCACW series have been really good. That's a thing that so that the phenomenon of the compilation releases is something that GMT is way out of ahead of everybody else on. There's reasons for that. One of which is that GMT's been of the current crop of wargame publishers. I'm oversimplifying here because OSG counts and they've been around since the 70s. And there's some other thing. Clash of Arms has been around for a long time. But of the bigger publishers, GMT's been around the longest. They have a lot of history. They've got a lot of old games they can bundle into these newfangled big Mondo packs. Somebody like Compass just hasn't been around long enough to have accumulated all those old games yet. Um, so GMT has a little bit of a leg up on it. MMP's been around for a while, but so much of over their history, so much of their output has been dominated by ASL, and they have historically not been incredibly aggressive reprinting stuff. That's not ASL. If it's ASL and it's like a module rather than a scenario pack or something, chances are pretty good it's getting reprinted. If it's historical, they've done that exactly once, as far as I know. I heard a rumor of is it really this much? I'd be John. I'd be very surprised if it's that much. I mean, how many games are in print from MMP right now versus how many games are in print from GMT? I believe the GM. I mean, I could be wrong here. I believe the GMT number it would be larger, right? Roads to Gettysburg 2 is by MMP. So the map is in fact the maps are redone, but they're not like they're redone in the same style. Okay. They're all Charlie Kibler maps, and Charlie went in and redid them digitally, but they look like the same maps. They are awesome maps. And unlike the originals, I remember I have the entire series, old, new, what magazines, whatever. So you could compare, say, so the maps for Roads to Gettysburg, the original from Avalon Hill, and Here Come the Rebels. Color match is not quite perfect on those, right? The overlap is also weird, but that's a bit of an artifact as to what territory you needed for each of the individual games. So the new volume, they all match. Now they don't like line up as a big rectangle either, but not quite that clean. But it's it's a beautiful map set. Highly, and I love the game system too. I don't know if it's that low though. To be fair, I don't know. I don't know what those numbers would be. Um, James Whitmer has located a copy of Fallen Eagles Waterloo. So I think I heard they're going to reprint that again. It's gotten at least 2 printings already. Um, it is a good series though. I will say this. So John asks, who do we think does the best maps for Hex Wargames? Joe. I assume Joe Y is Joe Youst. I really like Joe's maps. And not thinking of like area maps or something like that. There's some really nice area maps. Terry Lees does wonderful area maps, for example. My favorite maps are the GCACW maps, to be honest about it. But there's also lots of other really good maps, right? And my favorite maps are pretty much Joe Youst and Charlie Kibler and Mark Simonich. And depending on topic, Rick Barber, it kind of depends on the topic, but Rick didn't handle every single topic either, right? Mostly. Okay, so DMJ 284. He thinks there would be a support for that packaging in the Peninsular campaign. Yes, there is. It is called On to Richmond, and MMP has up for pre-order a new product called On to Richmond 2, which will contain a new version of On to Richmond plus a new version of Grant Takes Command, which is the Overland campaign, and then a whole new module covering the Petersburg campaign. So yes, there is a GCACW game on the Peninsula campaign, and furthermore, up to and I guess right now until the new one comes out, On to Richmond is the most expensive of the series to obtain, which is too bad because it's also a really great showcase for what that system does. It really shines in the Peninsula campaign. It does really well in Jackson's Valley campaign too, to be honest about it. So Mark Mahaffey stuff. I've certainly seen. I've got a number of Mark Mahaffey maps. I think he has done mostly pretty attractive maps, but sometimes his maps suffer from readability problems. That is so offhand the Balance of Powers. I think is a Mark Mahaffey map, which is a map a lot of people criticized. I have basically no problem with that map, except insofar as it has readability problems. And the first version of the Dark Valley was the other one that I had that's a Mark Mahaffey map that has readability problems. The East Front series maps are Mark Simonich maps. Is that an accurate statement? I'd have to look. The originals I think were Roger McGowan maps. Um, my favorite Joe Youst maps are the Goss maps. So if you want to, go check out Atlantic Wall or Vogt am Rhein or Hercules Forest or whatever. So Rick did a lot of games, a fair number of Napoleonic games, quite a lot of Civil War games, a very few World War II games. The only World War II games that I'm aware of that he did were the Summer Storm series. Yeah, I'm not sure if Edelweiss was the example I'm thinking of, but Edelweiss is the one game that I always think of when I think of that series. From Clash of Arms, he did a lot of Civil War maps. So if you're asking for specific titles, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is A Most Fearful Sacrifice, which just came out like last year, and which has a beautiful, huge Rick Barber map. And it's probably because of the size and the level of detail in which it is printed, it is probably, I think, the best Rick Barber map, to be honest. Rick Barber was a guy that gave tours at Gettysburg, so he knew the terrain absolutely intimately, and he did a multiple Gettysburg maps too. So this is, I think this is the script, which doesn't necessarily always show up on every single Rick Barber map. So he doesn't do that on the Edelweiss maps, for example. So, I mean, I've had, and if you watch the playthrough that we did of the P Ridge game, the Thunder in the Ozarks, you'll see me complaining from time to time about I can't read this. I need this hex number. I can't read the hex numbers. That is a problem with Rick Barber maps. I did find that in the case of a most fearful sacrifice, because it's so big, that problem is mitigated, and I have not yet. I haven't played the whole thing, but I haven't really encountered that problem anywhere on that map. I think War of the Suns is a pretty attractive game. People have criticized the mechanics and level of development on it, which I think is to some extent justified, but not fully. I would be interested in seeing a re-approach to the Rebel Sabers material as well. John says that Joe Yousted the FS maps, and John has done a lot of play on those maps, more than I have. So I'm not sure if the maps were I haven't actually sat down to compare the maps in the new Army Group Center to the old ones, so I don't know if they were re-rendered or not. Brant, thanks for stopping by. A favorite individual counters. I don't know that I have any favorite counters. My favorite counters are the guy that I just rolled good on. I don't believe. I mean, that's an ugly map. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know that it's the ugliest map ever. I'd have to. I believe counter examples could be produced. Some of which were from some of the Victory Games maps are pretty ugly. The hold on, because I'll show you an ugly, ugly, ugly map. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this. This is April's Harvest. It's the game on Shiloh from the Gamers and Dean Essig. Game system is pretty highly regarded, but and I mean, honestly, I picked this at random just because it's the first title that came to mind. This is not an attractive map. And some of the other ones in this series, this is the Civil War Brigade series. Some of the other ones in this series are they're clear, right? And so it's a little this one a little less clear, to be honest. And so in some cases, at least, I want to go easy on it, but man, this color palette is just nails on a chalkboard. Seriously. Stigler will of course mention, I believe he did already, um, the the Spitzer maps. They never really did. There are a couple of Spitzer games where the maps were fine because they were basically the SPI maps. There are other examples of those maps where they had to re-render them because the originals were done on like acetate, the Trank, or something that sounds absolutely crazy in this day of digital art. But the um that Stigler, that's not even the ugliest one. Okay. So uh yeah, so I mean it's now like the newer maps, the maps for Line of Battle, for example, I think are fine. They're not this sort of horrendously oversaturated color palette. But the probably the best looking Spitzer original maps were probably the ones in ETO and PTO, and those are nothing special. Okay, they're just a little, less bad than say the ones for Wellington's victory, or a Terrible Swift Sword. I'm looking for worse ones, just so you know. Um, three battles. Three Battles of Manassas is not bad, actually. In the Quiet Fields 2 is not as bad, but it's bad. Um, Strike Them a Blow's not as bad. We'll pull Thunder at the Crossroads. So this is Brigade level Gettysburg. Okay. this isn't the worst one either. You can see that it's clear, right? You're not really wondering what the terrain is in any particular hex, and that's good. The colors represent elevations here, obviously, but there's also things like ridge lines and steep slopes and things like that. You've got the there's a railroad cut somewhere on this map, for example. So the it's not what I'd call an attractive map. And here are the counters. The counters are really nothing to write home about either, to be blunt. Now I do feel like the maps in line. I like the line of battle rules set. Okay, I mean, it's a favorite system. I'm sticking with that system. I like it quite a bit. Um, but the maps in that series have improved a lot since since the days of CWB. But the counters have improved less. Like the leader counters are nicer. I'm not crazy about the unit counters. I really like the way that unit counters are done in GBACW. I think it's just better. I think the iconography on those counters is better. It's clearer where the units belong to. It just works better. So John mentions flat top, which we were joking about at Winterfest last year, that was done with a Sharpie and I think blue watercolors. So it's not. I honestly, despite its primitiveness, I actually don't think it's that bad of a map. It's certainly not like you're not going to hold it up as an example of sterling map art by any means. But I think it works. It works fine. It's not. It's a naval game, right? So who cares about the level of detail on the land? Um, and it's not the ugliest map. I mean, the color palette's okay. It's you know, it's I don't think it's even in the category of bad war game maps. Really, I think it's at the low end of mediocre. Der Weltkrieg, Abraxas, and we got some. So the interesting thing about the Der Weltkrieg maps. Let me pull one up so I can give you an example. I think it's called this. Uh, yeah, let's hope there's a example. That's not a good example. So this is the Eastern Front. This is a this will be a better example. So this is a huge combination of like 4 different packages that were originally published for Develop Creek. You'll notice that the hexes are weird here. So there's problems with this map. One is that it's hard to tell where the hexes are. Because the terrain is not by hex, it is by hex side. So you'll notice, for example, here in you can see my mouse, you'll see here's hex 1208, and there's some kind of village or whatever in it. And it's made up of 6 triangles, which represent the 6 hex sides. So you are actually like your TEC modifiers are based on the hex side that you're going through. And that's how it's marked on here. Now, where it gets super duper now out here in hex 1206, it's not too bad. You can tell where everything's at. But because of the lightness of the hex grid, once you start getting into the mountains here, you're kind of fucked. And you just have to kind of hope for the best as far as your map going, your counters going in the correct configuration. It's harder to mess up than it might look like. You get used to it after about an hour. I've had people telling me they get like physically nauseous looking at this map. I do not have that reaction, but it is certainly an unconventional hex map, and a lot of people have the serially negative reaction to it. We played the game and it's really kind of fine. John, no. However, what you're thinking of, so they did so John asks, didn't one of the versions of World in Flames have maps like this? And the answer is no. They never had the this sort of hex side terrain. However, this particular graphical style on the mountains is something that was in one of the earlier versions of World in Flames. The final edition was especially bad about it. They're really, those World in Flames final edition maps are really pretty ugly. They did tone it down a bit for the collector's edition. I'm happy to report it's basically the same art style, but it's not as hideous. Um, Man, BGG's a mess with this stuff. Where is the World in Flames Final Edition? Because I can't tell. I mean, I guess this is it. Um, so this is an example of the kind of mountains that we're talking about. Now, the rest of the terrain I don't think is bad, but man, these mountains are ghastly. Whereas if you go to the collector's edition, the 2017 edition, this is the one I have. You'll see again. Let's see if we can find. Now we got to be careful we're not looking at this because that's an older map, and this is an even older map. Here's an actual comparison. So this is the fourth edition or fifth, I think, fifth edition whiff map where you can see it's kind of conventional, and here's the final edition whiff map. I don't. I'm trying to find something that shows us the mountains. This is final edition. On the collector's edition maps. Um, so yeah, so we're now talking about the scandalously bad maps of the wargaming hobby, I guess. This looks good. So I've taken something of a look at. I haven't played it, but something of a look at Absolute Victory, and it actually looks pretty neat from a mechanical standpoint. But the map is ugly. Let's face it; it's not an attractive map. Um, so there's that. Um, Alan Salazar likes I assume you mean the new one, the new War and Peace from One Small Step. It does have a really attractive map. I gotta say that. Maps in Flames. I think they may have done an expansion called Maps in Flames. So it's a bit. I think that their Velkreek series is really good. I think that mechanically, it's a lot easier to play than you think it is based on looking at the map. You're like, holy cow, look at this thing. But really, the game system is pretty straightforward. It's not 100% conventional. There's some interesting wrinkles in there, but it's not. It's not like completely unintuitive or anything like that. It's really quite easy to play. Kind of reminds me of OCS for World War One in a lot of ways, to be honest about it. Yes, so ocean and desert maps can get away with that. Most other battlefields cannot. So there's that. So so this is the thing. So Matrix Games had a sale, I don't know, for Christmas or something like that. And I looked at these maps that John's talking about here. So what this is a giant set of rolled maps of the entire planet Earth at the Europe map scale. It's something like 26 feet long or something crazy like that, and something like 11 feet high. So I'm not sure you can really play that. And they're done in the style of the final edition map. So they do have the ugly mountains. They were selling the map set for something like 25 bucks or 30 bucks or something like that. And I was going to order it, but then shipping turned, and this is in the US, right? The shipping turned out to be like 50 bucks. And I'm like, wait a minute, 80 bucks sounds much less attractive than 30 bucks. So I ended up not getting it. And frankly, it'd be a novelty item if I had got it because nah, you're not going to do that. That's just crazy. So I am not going to hold up the, well, maybe I will literally hold the World in Flames maps up since we have failed to find a digital version. And it is in this room. So, and I think nobody can reasonably complain about the production quality on this thing, considering that it's 4+ fully mounted maps. Trying to show. So here's the Balkans, okay? And the map art is very similar, but the mountains are toned way down from sort of the uh, excessively abrasive contrast issues that we had back in the final edition days. So I am, I'm not going to necessarily say this is the greatest map art ever, but I think it's acceptable, and certainly not a tragedy to play on. Just an absurd amount of stuff in that box. Ken X, welcome back to the stream. Now, the old World in Flames maps are, like 4th edition and before, are just like regular hex maps. There's like nothing particularly distinctive about them. They're fine. There's nothing wrong with them. Yes, we did actually just finish talking about Dervell Creek, specifically in the context of the Dervell Creek maps, which are somewhat unconventional, let's say. The Duck Overlord, welcome back to the stream. We are doing okay. So I think I got a 3 weeks from now, I got a chiropractor visit, and we'll see how that goes. But right now I felt like I didn't need to get back to the chiro. After today's visit, I didn't need to get back anytime soon. I'm feeling pretty good right about now. So, Ken, I had that problem, I think last weekend, where I just literally could not sleep. I was up till like 3 a.m. I slept like garbage. I felt like crap the entire rest of the following day. It was terrible. Perfidious Albion mentions the Panzer Grenadier maps, which are also, shall we say, not great. However, I don't think the problem with the Panzer Grenadier maps is the art style so much, which is not great, but it was fine. The problem is the terrain is boring. I realize that there's like a lot of East Front battles that happen on the open steppe, but there's also a lot of East Front battles that happen not on the open steppe, and they could have used some of those too. The terrain, the scenario terrain for a lot of those Panzer Grenadier scenarios just makes the scenario boring. So we're talking about getting another cat. We'll see if that actually happens. Now, Mike Anthony mentions, and I've heard this without having actually seen any of the recent maps. I had the first 5 or 6 products for Panzer Grenadier, and the art changed a little bit, but the maps were still boring. So, and frankly, I felt a lot of the scenarios were pretty uninteresting too. I have heard, however, that some of the more recent Panzer Grenadier maps have been better, and maybe they've improved the scenario design too. I don't know. I do like the TSWW maps. They are very old fashioned, and they're done in a particular style, which is shockingly somewhat reminiscent, but not strictly reminiscent from an artistic standpoint, of the Europa maps, right? From like an info content perspective, they're very similar to the late era Europa maps that HMS GRD, whoever it was at the end, was doing. And I think the color palette works. I do think that the saturation level is kind of high, such that you run the risk of losing. So the Royal Navy are blue counter, like dark blue counters, and the the ocean hexes are dark blue. I think you run the risk of losing counters in that color mix. But I do like the maps. The counters are, if they were twice as thick, they'd be pretty nice, but old fashioned looking counters. But as it is, they're okay, really thin and old fashioned looking counters. There's a lot of like TSWW has done better than Europa as far as putting like extra information on the counters. Not that there's a lot necessarily, but like certain special units will have a dot on the counter or something like that. Um, that's something that Europa never did. So, for example, I got First to Fight, which is Invasion of Poland 1939, which is, I think, one of the better and more interesting Europa games, in the sense of having a kind of self-contained situation that you don't have to necessarily commit 10 years of your life to playing. Um, and there's like certain German in the setup. There are certain German units, maybe they're Polish units, I forget, but I think they're German units that are required to base at a specific air base or air bases. And there's nothing on the counter that says these have restricted basing. So you just kind of have to guess which of this several of this particular type of plane have to base at this base, versus all the other counters in the counter mix that are the same exact type of plane, but that can base anywhere they want. They could have put something on there that says, there's a dot. It means there's restricted basing, or here's, whatever, a colored. They didn't do colored bars at the time. Let me put it that way. So I did. Let's pull Abraxas MF's comment here. So it reminds me. So I did an unboxing, except that the phone ran out of power like 3.5 minutes in. So the unboxing, I might try to reconstruct it. The only reason I'm motivated to do that, it's not like I don't have plenty of unboxings in the can, is because of that map material. It is a map material that I have never seen from GMT before. It is very reminiscent of the linen style paper that appears in Clash of Arms' various products, and has for many years. So one wonders whether that's going to be a thing that GMT does from now on, or if it is just something that they happened to experiment with, or an accident in printing. I don't know, but they feel really nice. So Brent is asking about two different Vance von Voorhees games: Kasserine Rommel's Battles for Tunisia from GMT, and Decision at Kasserine. These are different games. Or are they? I'm not sure that they are. So these are two different implementations of the same game. The original of which is a third version of that game that appeared in the Wargamer back in 1983. So the way I mean, I'm kind of, I don't know a lot about the specific mechanics. Okay. So as far as I could tell, there's a re-implementation of Kasserine that Von Voorhees did for GMT, which is Kasserine Battle, Rommel's Battle for Tunis. And then there's a different reimplementation of Decision of Kasserine that he did for Compass. I would probably be inclined to, if I were involved, if I were interested in the topic over and above the two Kasserine games that I already have, I would probably be inclined to look at the one from Compass based on the theory that maybe it represents Vance's more up-to-date thinking on the topic. You might want to download the rule book and look at the designer's notes before making that judgment. That would be my preference. But I don't know if that's the case. Is it just like a straight reprint of the one from the Wargamer? Who knows? Maybe it is, but I don't have that information off the top of my head. So John Longshore, thanks so much. Always much appreciated. yes, do please thumbs up the video. Please do subscribe to the channel. Super chat, super stickers, always appreciated. So let's pull up. I've got 2.2 million windows open here. So including a bunch of crap that I didn't get done. So I was going to try to get a Traveler Tuesday video done, but then I got sidetracked uh, by the blue people. So at AMD. So I'm blaming AMD if there's problems with video output this week. So the plan, however, is to have an interview out on Wednesday. This interview is about Bear Trap, upcoming from GMT. It's on their P500 list. And then the next interview is on Werewolf. And then on Thursday we'll have an unboxing of something. I don't know what it'll be yet. But I've got to get the editor working, right? I can't just upload these things because I don't film them like that anymore. I film them to be lightly edited, which sometimes means heavily edited. So we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, we will definitely be on with Dan tomorrow. That will be on this channel at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. What will we be talking about? Nobody knows. And probably we will be talking about whatever random shit flies into Dan's head, because that's how it usually works. So I would like to thank everybody for stopping by tonight. Thanks for all your support. And remember that you are, in fact, helping to support the channel by showing up for these things and talking in the chats and all these other things. I don't feel like I paid very close attention to the chat tonight. I did hear all the talk early on about Nach Paris 1914 from Buka, which does look really nice, I gotta say. So we'll see if we can bring in more content from Buka Simulations at some point in the future. So once again, thanks so much for stopping by. We'll have more announcement. I don't know about announcement is the right word, but I may have some more news on the 15th anniversary celebrations in the next couple of weeks. So I will definitely be back next Monday. Next Monday. We do have a RPG stream in the works too. I'm not 100% sure whether that's going to happen next week or not. It got bumped from this week, but and next week is bad, but there may be a special thing happening next Sunday too. So stay tuned for that. If you're subscribed to the channel, you get the notifications on, then you'll get a notification if we happen to go live with a certain special person. So once again, thanks everybody. Have a great night. We'll see you all next week.